you'll send me the PowerPoint and I can share it with the other folks. So
Okay.
without any further ado, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Eric, for inviting us. We're very happy to be here. And we always start our podcast this way, saying, Hi, I'm Gail.
And hi, I'm Catherine.
Catherine and I are the founders and co-hosts of Women Over 70, Aging Reimagined, which is our award-winning weekly podcast. We've completed over 330 episodes. We've recorded the stories of women who are living their lives in meaningful ways that educate and inspire other women. A little background. When we launched the podcast 6 years ago, we never dreamed of the community that we were building. We knew that we wanted to interview women 70 and over, women whose vibrant ways of living shatter the myth that we become irrelevant as we age. These women are committed to living their later decades with purpose and vitality, and their stories empower all women, women of all ages. So in the next hour, we hope to share the voices of some of the guests that we have recorded because they will encourage discussion. And encouraging discussion is what we want to do at the end of this presentation. So as you listen to the guests and we tell you more about what's going on with them, please consider how their stories might inform your choices as you age. Yes. Whoops, go back one.
So you may be familiar with Carl Jung's quote, "The afternoon of life is just as full of meaning as the morning, only its meaning and purpose are different." And so in the morning of life, we tend to look more outside of ourselves. We might be focused on our body, our looks. We think about achievement and how we're going to make our mark in the world. And then in the afternoon of life, we disengage from parts of our identity and we set new priorities. We anticipate living a different yet fulfilling life. As one of our podcast collaborators, Beverly Glazer, says, we no longer ask for permission. We are owning a life that is unapologetically ours. And we'll discuss Jung's notions here a bit later, but just think as we go present the women to you, just think about what this might mean to you in your own lives and the lives of the people that you are teaching with.
Whoops. Won't do it that way. Okay. So the stories of our guests educate, inspire, and engage our listeners through their unique perspectives. And we're often asked, what common traits do you find among these diverse women? So we conducted thematic analysis of over 300 episodes to identify the qualities that most of our guests exhibit. We discovered 6 C's that are essential for women to live fulfilling and meaningful lives in their later decades. And we created the acronym FLAMES to help illuminate the C's. And this has been a daunting task because we have so many women to choose from for each of the C's. And you know, we have outstanding candidates in all of our archives. 300 plus episodes creates a huge archive of women over 70, 70 to 110 actually. And today, so we're going to focus on 3 of these C's. As you can see, the ones that are highlighted in red: learning with curiosity, making contributions, and expressing creativity. And you'll hear more about them in the forthcoming audio clips from our podcast guests. And the guests that you meet today were chosen because they offer nuanced meaning of the C's, and they represent diversity among our guests.
We'll start with learning with curiosity. This is the theme of your conference, and I think we can say with certainty that 100% of our podcast guests are lifelong learners. Curiosity tickles their brains and they makes them wonder, and that leads to new learning. And some pursue learning to deepen or expand what they already know, but many others seek out new ideas and new experiences. Learning leads to new learning, as you know, and so that cycle goes. So we want to introduce you to Linda Seeger and Ronnie Hartfield. So Linda, age 76, has just boundless curiosity about many things. When she sets out to do something, she learns from the best, and when available, she participates in competitions. She took up competitive horseback riding 50 years after she last sat in the saddle. Then she took up piano 8 years ago and now performs in competitions for 2 and 8 hands. But for Linda, competition is about making connections with colleagues and having fun, and it's not about winning and losing for her. She's also a screenwriter. She's an author of 17 books, 10 on spirituality. And then she went back to school to study feminist theology just because she was curious. Well, now she's a feminist theologian, and she uses this lens as her framework for almost all of her other pursuits. So here's Linda.
So feminist theology begins to look at, well, who are the women? And who are the women in the Bible that are important? There's deaconesses in the book of Acts, and of course, the Virgin Mary and Hannah. And I mean, there are these remarkable women that don't get talked about very much. Mm-hmm. And so you study that. You also study how feminism focuses very much on equality, that everyone has a voice. And so you look at social justice issues from the female point. How is the female, maybe gets the short end of the stick a lot of times, or social problems can fall more heavily on people of color and women. Mm-hmm. And so, you study a lot of social problems. Like there was an ecofeminist who was one of my teachers, and lots of diversity in the class. You heard a lot of people's stories. You understood more about what poor women go through. You learned about white privilege. I'm a white privilege middle-class woman. And you say, well, what does that all mean? And you study it and you say, oh yeah, I get it. I understand that.
I was just looking at the chat, and yes, it is audio. We're not playing the videos today. So, Ronnie Hartfield, she's 84, and she's 20 some years beyond retirement, and her curiosity, her love of learning, just continues to flourish. She honed her executive management talents at Chicago's Urban Gateways and had 2 leadership positions at the Art Institute of Chicago. But post-retirement, she took up new areas of study, and she was interested in how sacred art is exhibited and how it's interpreted for the wider public. So she has become a consultant in that area. And then the other part of what her curiosity led her was about her family history. She researched and wrote a book about her mother's life. It's called Another Way Home, The Tangled Roots of Race in One Chicago Home. And so we'll hear Ronnie speak about how curiosity has led her through many doors of opportunity and discovery.
All of a sudden, I found myself in a position of consulting with museums in different places about this concern for respectful interpretation and exhibition of sacred art. And it's a kind of fascinating arena because, of course, people understand their local artworks. They understand local expressions, but in many instances, they look on expressions of art of the sacred in other traditions as being exotic or worse in some way, cartoon-like. So I had to kind of really explore that with a lot of different people in many different settings. One of the big ones that sort of emerged in these last years has been at the University of Chicago. And I got my graduate degree there, of course, in 1982 as a returning scholar. And I can tell you that was a big adventure because I was so concerned that I would be old and outmoded entering graduate school at the age of 41. But it turned out that my experience in creating projects and personal projects and working civically was valuable in graduate school and helping me to study with more tools than I might have had if I'd been younger. So all of that was terrific. And it kind of morphed into working with a great scholar, Martin Marty, who decided that he was going to start something on religion and public life. And then having known that I was interested in religion and certainly active in public life, that I might have something to contribute to that initiative. So I worked with that for several years and really enjoyed that because it was a learning experience working with graduate students who were interested in what should I call it, enlarging their endeavors for public attention.
Yes. And for the woman who asked, or the person who asked about it not being videoed, we have listed for you on each of these screens the episode number. So we'll hope you'll go back to womenover70.com or to the YouTube channel for Women Over 70, and you'll be able to see them and hear them again in video as well as in audio. Okay, so now we're moving on to, sorry, I'm having a little bit of problem here. We're moving on to expressing creativity. And so all of you know that creativity takes multiple forms, different ways of showing up. And it can be as simple as a brainstorming session to ideate a new solution to a complex problem. That's creativity. Or as complex as becoming a master painter whose art is exhibited in museums. And the two guests we chose, Sally Fox and Margaret Burke, illustrate that expressing creativity is important at every age. And older adults maybe have the advantage of their lived experiences to express new forms of creativity. So our first guest is Sally Fox. And Sally wrote a book in 2023 that's called Meeting the Muse After Midlife, A Journey to Meaning. And it centers on creativity and joy. As you'll hear from her, she just evokes joy. She reveals how she found joy in being creative after 50, as she explored gardening, clowning, improv, theater, storytelling, and singing. And although her creative focus always leaned towards writing, Sally took up painting at age 69 and exhibited 30 paintings 3 years later. You can see why our guests are so inspiring to us. We just love them all. She now sees herself as an artist. However, she emphasizes that creativity is not just about producing art. However, it's not just about producing art. Rather, the most creative thing that we can do, all of us, that we can do is design our own lives every day to be engaging, expansive, and full of learning. So here is Sally.
So that could take the form of music. It certainly took the form of writing. I went off into improv theater. I tried clowning. I went into gardening. And kind of last but not least, I became an artist. So all of those were incredibly rich and fun and fulfilling adventures to go on. And at the same time, I want to remind people that the most creative thing we can do is to design our life. And so in a certain way, my creativity doesn't have to be about the big adventures and the particular crafts that I'm pursuing. It's also about waking up each day and wondering, how can I design this day? How can I create this day? How can I live with that sense of engagement? So that for me is the constant. And then these other adventures are really fun.
That's Sally Fox. And now a slightly different interpretation of how you might be creative is from Margaret Burke. And remember, each of our guests has their own unique perspective, and that's what makes them all so interesting.
So I would give people like lots of prompts, in a class, like just throw out a couple things: an influential person, a parent, a grandparent, a teacher, an influential happening, a trip, an accident, an influential place, an influential object, and lots of things. And then I say, whatever bubbles up is what have energy. And then people would choose one or two of those to write about. And they'd write a who, what, when, and where. And then after that, we begin to develop that with sense memories. And sense memories are so key.
What is that?
Sense memories are sight, sound, taste, touch. So that's when the story really begins to develop, because you would say, yeah, we lived in this like big house. Well, how big was that house? What color was that house? How many rooms did that house have? And then you go into smell, you say, and the fireplace was always, there was that aroma of the fireplace, and then you go into touch, and then there was that rug that had been hand woven that was on that floor, and it was scratchy on my feet, and it came from that woman who lived in the Southwest. That was my aunt, so it's the way those senses then bring back. In the class I just taught right now, that exercise was like when they came back after I gave that exercise and they went home and wrote, they came back with going, wow. Wow. That opened so much more memory for me. Yeah. That every sense created a richer and a richer and a richer memory.
Let me tell you a little bit more about Margaret Burke before we move on. She's 80. She's episode 115. She's a master storyteller, as you can tell. She believes in the power of story, not only to entertain, but to touch the heart, to spark the imagination and embolden the spirit. She performs at storytelling venues, at senior residences, women's gatherings, and festivals. And she co-produces and co-hosts storytelling events and teaches storytelling. She's former president and presently treasurer of Storytelling, Inc., a national association of storytellers. With degrees in theater and communications and an early career in arts administration, Margaret returned to her love of the spoken word only 15 years ago. As a teacher of storytelling, her niche is particularly older women, And in our later years, life is calling us to record our experiences, to tell our stories, and to pass down our history to future generations. Whoops.
And so we'll move on to the final C, making contributions.
Yes, we will. When we
And
get
think about this as women offering their legacy to the current and younger generations. And so what we find is that the women we talk with have a strong commitment to making a difference, and that continues into their 70s and well beyond. I just met with two women today at a where they live in a nice retirement community, and they just say, well, we're not done yet. We have so much more to do. We have so many more things that need to be improved, and so we're continuing to work at it. And so some of our podcast guests, their causes range from they confront all of the social ills. These are our social activists and our healers, and they write inspirational memoirs, and they are committed to protecting other species. And so here are two such women, both in their 80s, Susan Bauer and Audrey Peoples. So Susan is 84, and as a young girl, she was so curious about what she called that other world, which included her infatuation with turtles. And in adulthood, Susan tried her hand at being a conservationist, but then felt that she needed to do more than just educate, just tell people about stuff. And she thought, well, turtles live in ponds. So she decided to make ponds hospitable to turtles, to fish, and other species. And she founded this organization, Old Ladies Against Underwater Garbage. And she recently received a Climate Resilience Hero Award from the Red Cross. So today, Susan and her team of divers and swimmers dive into ponds, and they can retrieve up to 110 pounds of trash with each dive. So here's Susan.
Then we go, and in about an hour, the kayakers raise their paddle over their head, and that's the signal to return. And then you really have to return. You have to just swim. It's very hard to swim over a drowned canoe, a Bud Light can, and not pick it up. But when the dive is over, the dive is over. And you swim back. And we got 6 kayaks, and kayak after kayak look like a ragged mountain of trash. There are tires, there are futons, there are rugs, there are bicycle wheels, there are lawn ornaments, of course, cans and bottles and fishing lures and dog toys. And they come in, sometimes 2 women will pick up a kayak, turn it over, and out came 35 beer cans once. Others will bring the stuff up by the armful, and it all gets piled in one place. We take out what's valuable. We will find old bottles that are clearly over 100 years old. There are ways to tell. We are now working with a state geologist, archaeologist, and he's going to help us identify things. And as we work, as we brag and question and who got the owl's head, who got the leg of a merry-go-round horse, all these things, the people from the back, the onlookers, move forward, and slowly you can watch them get into this because we are having so much fun. We are so pumped. We're relieved, we're tired, but we've met the challenge. And what one person might be able to take out of a pond, 10 swimmers, we can get an awful lot out of that pond. And
okay.
We have a number of guests who are quite involved in protecting and preserving the environment. And then Audrey Peoples offers a different, works in a whole different arena. She's 81. She's a Chicago history maker. She's well known for her courageous efforts to eliminate racism and empower women. She's often been the first Black woman to hold impactful leadership roles, including she was a trust officer at a major Chicago bank. She was the executive director of the Girl Scouts of Chicago, and she was CEO of the YWCA of Metropolitan Chicago. She, in her retirement years now, she's a very active board member. She champions women's rights and anti-racism initiatives. What she's well known for is as asking the hard questions that hold the board and the staff accountable, and make the needed practices that are needed, change the practices. So she's one area that she makes a huge difference is as she's chair of the board of Turnstone Development. It's an organization that builds affordable housing for low-income families and seniors in Illinois and Florida. So here's Audrey.
I got on the trust board. Most of there were a few women on there, but they were pretty prominent women or women like the head of Ogilvy or one of those. Leo Burnett, I think it was Leo Burnett. I didn't think I was going to be asked back on the trust board, to be honest with you, for a second term. And I'll tell you what their response was. I was asked to serve on the board. I had retired, and I was asked to serve on the board. And Marshall Field was on the board, and John Bryan was on the board. And so they were top corporate CEOs. And the community trust is very thorough about looking at proposals and raising good questions. They even had a question once of, what's the diversity of your board? And sometimes those men would be willing to, we'd ask the question and I would raise the question, well, if you're going to ask what is the makeup of their board, what is the diversity of their board, and they're not going to be held accountable for not having any diversity, then why do we ask the question? Because from my experience, different people, and so one of the responses was, but they're helping so many people, they're helping minorities. These were agencies who were asking for money. And they were saying, well, they're helping a lot of people. And I said, that's not the point. When you have different people at the table, different decisions get made. And you ask these questions because these are people who bring their experiences to bear. So sometimes it was not comfortable. So when I was asked back for a second term, I asked the CEO, Terry Mazzani. I was shocked that they would ask me back again because I would raise these questions. I didn't want to be just a name on a letterhead. And he said, well, that's why it's so important, because you have been in the trenches and you've worked with these organizations. And so you can ask questions that maybe nobody thought about.
It was a little known fact. Audrey Peoples and Ronnie Hartfield are sisters.
Yes.
So we'd really like to have some conversation with you about what messages about lifelong learning did you hear from our guests, or that resonated with you, or your own experiences with lifelong learning? Feel free to participate.
Folks can either raise their hand and unmute or put something in the chat. One thing that struck me was when Ronnie was talking about 41, feeling old at 41 and joining a master's program, right? And now she's like 84, right? And so 41's not necessarily old, right? And
Right.
so and not only would you bring certain perspective to it being that age, but you've also still got a lot of time to kind of work through your thinking, right? And to develop your thinking on that topic. So picking things up years when she like picked up horseback riding decades after having been on a horse, right? So it's not too late to pick things up again.
Never
I
too
was
late.
actually, as she was talking about like picking up, like, oh, first I got back on a horse and then I picked up the piano. Then I was like, oh, and then she played piano on the back of a horse. I was like, where's that going to go? So, but it,
Probably could.
yeah, but it didn't go in that direction. So, yeah. So, other folks' thoughts of what you heard from those six folks? Yeah, Kenya.
I got from every single story, like the underlying tone for me said fearless.
Mm.
Mm.
And that's what resonated with me because I think fear is one of those things that just it can just keep you from doing so many things and missed opportunities and shoulda, coulda, wouldas. And what I'm hearing from these ladies is it's not about my age. I have the time, I'm doing it, and that's that. So I love that whole aspect of it, no matter what it is. They're just going for it. I love it.
Yeah, and Kenya, the fear thing. I mean, people often talk about like language learning and they're like, oh my God, kids learn language so much faster than grown-ups. And that's not actually true. There's actually a cognitive advantage for adults to learn languages. Um, but because they understand other languages. But what happens with adults is they start to be fearful and they start to think about like what they're going to look like when they're learning another language as opposed to kids. So that fear is like a real thing. Yeah, Fagan.
Hi, I just wanted to say I'm not there yet, but I'm getting close. I just wanted to say that it's very inspirational. I loved hearing. Sorry, I had to take a few other conversations here, but very inspirational. And also, I'm thinking um, it's wonderful because now, like you're doing things that because you want to, not because you have to. Because sometimes, like your working times, you feel like it's just, oh my God, I have to. But now that you can actually do what you want to and make a difference, um, just that's what I wanted to share.
Yes. And the beauty of it is that so many of these things can be done in just small little bites, right? And so hopefully we get to do a little of these other things while we are working. I know it's hard. I've been there, of course, but we want to make sure that we keep our creativity fresh, that we keep learning new things all the time, regardless of what it has to do with what we're doing.
Yeah. So Gail and Catherine, I'd actually like to turn the camera on the two of you, and you developed a podcast, right? So what was your learning process like? What was your learning project of putting a podcast together?
Go ahead, Catherine.
Because Gail's the one who said, after many, many conversations about the issues facing women in our society, said, well, we can't just talk about this all the time. We need to do something. And then she said, well, she wanted to start do a podcast, and 70 women over 70. And I was getting ready to leave my full-time position at DePaul University. And I thought, well, I want to do that. And so that's how we got started. But for me, it was terrifying because I didn't really, I didn't listen to a lot of podcasts. I didn't really quite understand them. I certainly didn't know the language, the jargon, and then nothing about how things work technically. So we were fortunate to take an immersive course in podcasting that was sponsored by Gail's son, actually. And then we just jumped in.
Jumped in, we did. I really got interested in podcasting because my son was running summits that put together wannabe podcasters and podcasters who had already been doing it for a few years, kind of like Shark Tank. And if if you speak in 2 minutes about the podcast you want to do, one of these already podcasting people might say, oh, I'd like to have you on my show, and you could get started. So the podcasting bug hit me, and then I brought that back to Catherine, and away we went.
So beyond the sort of the technical stuff of, microphones and platforms and that sort of thing, what about the interviewing part? Like, how would you say that your interviewing skills developed over the course of the podcast?
Yes. So initially we reached out to our networks. We both had vast networks, and we asked who would be interested in being interviewed by us as we honed our interviewing skills. And so we had lots of people say, yes, we'd love to be interviewed by us. And that gave us time to really get better at it. Yeah.
Both had brought quite a bit of experience to the interviewing process. Gail has been a coach, women business owners for many, many years, and I've done a lot of qualitative research that was really based on interviewing. But this was different. We are more like a conduit for women to tell their stories. And so our job is we have before the actual recording, we have one of us has a chat with the person, and we talk about the format, and we get to learn quite a bit about the person's background, and then focus in on what are the themes that we want to cover in 30 minutes. So that helps a great deal. So then we're all really pretty well primed for the conversation. It's not scripted, but we have the context, so that helps. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we don't have to ask many questions because our guests have a lot to share and don't need much prompting.
That's true.
Yeah. Yes. I always do that. I have a podcast as well, and I always talk to the folks beforehand, not, as you said, not to create a script, but let's think about the beats that we want to hit and, to give us some shape. So beyond your initial network, Meryl had a question about finding the women for your podcast. So after you tapped the people that you knew already, how did you get the other 280 or however many are outside of your initial network?
The beauty of what we're doing is that the women we interview are telling their stories, their own journeys. And we urge them to share their journey with others in their networks. We give them the link so that they can do that. And then their friends might say, well, I want to do that too. And over the years, we have developed quite a long list of people who want to be interviewed, who want to tell their story and share it with us. And in the last few years, media has found us. And so people who write books or memoirs or do other things, maybe it's in the arts and the theater and want some exposure, would like to be interviewed with us. And anybody who is on this call who would like to be interviewed with us, who is 70 or over, or has a topic of interest that is for women aging, no matter your age, we will consider interviewing you. And you can reach out to us at info@womenover70.com.
I would also add that for me, when I left my full-time position at DePaul, and I stayed in my community, but I'd never been really involved in the community activities, and so I joined some groups, and for me, it is everywhere I go, I can't help myself now. I'm looking at who am I talking with, what's her story, I wonder how old she is, and I've become quite bold about asking people, women, to consider being a guest. And it's great for me because I'm an introvert, so it's really helps with my networking and conversational skills.
I don't know if you saw in the chat, Wanda said she's taken up watercolor now and learning new language and writing a book. So lots of stuff to do. This is one of the reasons that in the New Jersey Association for Lifelong Learning Adult Learner Writing Contest, we do have art and photography in there as categories, right? Because people can be picking up art, they can be picking up photography, especially now that everybody's phone is a is the camera as well.
Right, right. Yeah. Any other questions?
I'm curious about how the concepts of creativity and curiosity, which we associate with learning, and creativity and contribution. Do those three qualities, characteristics resonate with you as you are either in your own life or as you're working with older people?
And folks can either unmute or put stuff in the chat.
Yes, Kathy. You have to unmute, Kathy.
I just wonder, because I think myself as I get closer to this point in my life, and you know what you're saying, like I wonder if it's a societal thing, and if you have found, I am countlessly asked over and over at why at my age am I still working? You know, people, I think that's a societal thing that we. That's why it's wonderful what you're doing, because people will start to see and jump on this bandwagon because and especially younger people, I'll say, well, I need a purpose in my life. I need to interact. I need to try to feel like I'm still useful and doing something. But it seems that so many people feel that as you approach this age, that why aren't you just kicking back and doing a whole lot of nothing? It's like, so we need to change the thinking, I think, of how people look at us as we get to that point.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're really part of a larger movement to redefine what it means to retire and to think of this as another phase, another chapter where we get to, as somebody said earlier, we get to basically kind of do what moves us, what our passion is, what our purpose is, and we have some room to discover and explore. So yeah, this notion of both Gail and I are constantly, it's like, you're working all the time, you're supposed to be retired.
Yeah.
And I say, well, this doesn't feel like working.
Right.
This is fun. This is
joy.
Yes.
And it's a comment on how many people experienced work as something to get away from.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I didn't feel that way about my work. I don't think Gail did either. But so Jessica, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I wanted to say yes. These words resonate with me, and I think always have, but there is something. So I'm 51 now, and there's something that just started to happen to me that changed the way I think about learning and doing new things. And it's some combination, I think, of age and having my kids be grown up, because I raised two kids and now they're adults. But I'm very interested in being a beginner. And so I love always hearing stories like some of the stories you shared about women taking on new things later in life. There's something that's so exciting to me about doing something that I'm really bad at and just starting from scratch right now. And maybe that's part of what Eric was saying about, not really caring how you look anymore. So there's like or not being as stressed about something, but I'm definitely just at the beginning of some new phase that I'm really enjoying. That's about experimentation and learning in a way that is like a creative new phase of my life.
That's
I love what you said about beginning and not having to know how to do it. It sounds like there may be a bit more openness on your part to the process.
And maybe also thinking, well, if not now, when? Like, there's a point where you're like, oh yeah, I'm not getting younger, I'm only going to get older, so might as well try things now while I can.
Right. There's common wisdom today that longer health spans occur when people are more interested in learning new things as they age, in contributing, continuing, as one woman said, having purpose, having a reason to get up in the morning. And yeah, so I'm 83 and Catherine is 75.
Six.
Six. I keep wanting to make her younger than she is. And I have no intention of stopping. This just fills me with joy to be able to do this kind of work and to know that we're impacting other women by having this legacy recording that they can share with their families and other future generations.
I think that the learning and the creativity part really affects how you conceptualize contribution too, right? Because for a long part of our lives, our contribution is measured in economic terms, right? Like what did we earn? What did we do? Who did we provide for? And those are providing for people, taking care of them. Those are really important things. But like there's lots of ways to contribute, right? And so I think opening up ideas about that too is like really, really important.
Right. We'd be interested to know what some of the ways all of you are thinking about reinventing yourselves or reimagining creativity and contribution. So share some of your ideas with us.
I think Suzanne's got her hand raised.
Suzanne?
All right.
And then Glenda.
Yeah, I had my hand raised. I guess I was kind of lucky in life. My first job was at WT Grants, and they put me in the hardware, plumbing, electrical department where people would always come in with problems. So I kind of started early in life becoming a problem solver. And I carried that throughout my military career because I spent 24 years on active duty in the Army. And when I got out of the Army and went back to college under the old Vietnam Veterans GI Bill, I found that I was problem solving things for people in class, young students, and I've continued. Right now, I'm employed at Mercer County Community College, and although I was hired as a instructor, essentially, I wear a dozen different hats during the day. I'm the interim IT person. I'm the audio visual person. How can we do this? And so I'm kind of happy I discovered that I was a problem solver because even though each part of my phase of my life has like ended, I'm still carrying that through, but into different areas, you know? And by the way, I'm 72. I'll be 73 this year.
Yes.
So
thank you for sharing that. Yes. And Glenda, how are you thinking?
Oh, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm 76. I'm on my way to substitute teach at an adult learning center this evening. And what I had interesting experience yesterday at the center, which is NCC. The director is Mr. Christian Barcelos, where a student came back that did not know me, and he had just gotten his GED. So he was excited, and he was saying some things to the class when I walked in. And it wasn't all good advice, but it was in his exuberance of accomplishment. And when I began to speak to him, because I'm an older person, not old, older, I said, first of all, you're in the classroom. My name is, and I gave my name, Miss Wills. Now, this is what you say when you want to speak. And I began, because of my old-fashioned traditional ways of responding, began to give him correct verbiage as to how to address an adult in a class. I said, you're speaking from the back of the class? Now, it is proper, if you have information, come stand in the front of the class. And then began to coach him on this is the way you address the class. You say your name, you begin to speak. So the value of what traditional older ladies and gentlemen have, Eric, I'm just going to put you in there, even though I don't know your age, to see that is so valuable in the midst of changing with all of the social media and the new styles and the new way to speak and the AI integration, to realize the essence of our journey and the values we have carried over the years are still very relevant and needed to impact the young people and the young adults who may have lost the sense of the value of respecting elders and respecting those who are older. There's a lot of our life experiences that can encourage them, because the young gentleman, after we went through our moment, he said, "Miss Wills, when I first walked in, I thought you were mean." I said, "Thank you. Don't tell anybody anything differently." And he said, "But you're really very nice. And I actually learned from you tonight."
Nice.
Wow. The treasure within our life journeys is so phenomenal in the diversity of how we share it, but not to devalue like time is over. No, the jewels and the diamonds within our aging or aged experience are still alive and vibrant to affect others in a very positive way. So I thank you for this encouraging podcast expression. Thank you, Gail. And thank you also, I know the other lady, Catherine, for your perspective and what you are doing to bring forth the value of the individual life journeys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Glenda, I'd like to follow up on that. So one of my research strands is adult education in Japan. And it's pretty common over there for an adult learner who maybe became literate later in their life or learned Japanese as an immigrant later in their life. They have formal connections with like junior high schools and high schools where the adults will go and give kind of testimony about their life. And so they don't wait for it to happen in sort of an ad hoc fashion, right? They organize these opportunities for younger people to hear from older people. And I don't know of it happening that much in the States, and that would be great if adult ed programs could connect with local schools to formally go in and share these life experiences. I think that would be really, really important.
Yes. Agreed. Anyone else?
I have a question. Can you hear me? I just lost my connection here.
Yes.
Do you see a value in a podcast for men over 70, or do women have their own stories to tell?
I would say yes. I'm sure there's value in having a podcast focusing on men, but I think we wouldn't do it. But I think at the same time, I think women's experiences of aging have their own qualities that tend to be somewhat different from men, and I think so. It'd be very interesting. There are actually a couple of podcasts about focusing on men, but we felt very confident that we want to focus on women and their lived experience, and because for many women as they get older, there's a freedom that comes, a freedom of expression and a freedom to, as people have said, to pursue new initiatives, and to put themselves first every now and then. And so I think aging is a complicated experience for everyone, men and women, but we think, speaking for Gail, that we want to keep it separate.
And I just want to add that that women often feel invisible once they've left their careers and they're out of the normal environment for them, and they just simply wonder, am I being seen? Am I being heard? And we wanted to make sure that anyone who felt that way and everyone who had stories to share could do it through Women Over 70.
Meryl, check back in with me in 10 years. And then we'll see if I started a podcast for men over 70.
Okay, I will.
Be great. Be great.
I just want to add that the voices you heard in the clips are clear that we can reimagine aging in our later years, and that it really all has to do with how we think, not who we are, not what we're doing, but how we think. And as we've talked about here, being in the afternoon of life offers opportunities that weren't always available in the morning. So we welcome all ages to become involved with Women Over 70. We'd like to hear from you. We'd like you to join our Aging Reimagined Circle and enjoy free monthly programs where we have discussions just like this on topics that are interesting.
Okay. Thank you. Anything?
All right, I just muted everybody, and then Gail and Catherine, you can unmute. Just because there was some side chatter.
Yeah, well, we just want to encourage you to visit Women Over 70 Aging Reimagined, womenover70.com, and look into our Aging Reimagined Circle. We have quite a few programs coming up in the next, in June. There's one on June 10th, one on June 17th, and then we usually meet the third Tuesday of every month. And we'd love to have you be a part of it.
All right, so thanks, Catherine and Gail, for your time and expertise.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Today. Thanks everybody for participating today.